Boker Tov, everyone. Shalom, Rabbi Eric Solomon in Raleigh, North Carolina, Beth Meyer Synagogue. Morning Torah. This week's Parsha is Toldot. It is the story, starts at the beginning with Rebecca and Isaac, Rivka, in Yitzchak Avinu. And Rebecca is pregnant. First, she's actually barren. And very quickly in the Torah, it tells us she's pregnant with two fetuses in her womb. They are mitrotzitzim. They're kind of like battling with each other in her womb. She feels it. She feels pain, struggle, and she ends up saying this famous line. That's a rhetorical question. Im ken lama zenochi. If this is the case, if I'm suffering with these babies inside me, lama zenochi. Why do I exist? With a very unique word, anochi, not lama zeani, which would be why am I? Why is my I suffering so much? Why do I exist at all? If I suffer, this is the fundamental question that all humanity asks at some point. None of us gets through life without some, sadly, suffering. And some points we give up on that suffering or reach a point of it's the end. Why do I exist if I suffer so much, if I suffer like this? I want to bring that question to the fore personally in my earliest rabbinic journey, which I was reminded this week of this story when that pasuk came up. When I was a second-year rabbinical student, I had an internship in Worcester, Massachusetts. I came from New York up to Worcester, and my teacher, Rabbi Seth Bernstein, wonderful rabbi, congregational rabbi, and my teacher. I first arrived, I was mid-20s, early 20s. I barely knew what I was doing. I was sent up to an internship, and of the many things Rabbi Seth Bernstein was talented at, he was a scholar and teacher and a wonderful preacher, and a community builder, a justice seeker, but also his issues of bikor cholim, mitzvah, visiting the hospital, visiting the sick, pastoring to those who are suffering was his true expertise. So he brought me to the hospital, my first visit. I'd been limited time in the hospital in the past. I'd never done a visit to the hospital in my life as a quote-unquote rabbi or rabbinical student. I'll never forget it. I go into the room with Rabbi Bernstein, Seth, and we go into the room of this and walk in, and there's a mother by the side of the bed, and in the bed is a young man. He must have probably a teenager, maybe a junior or senior in high school, and he had been in some kind of major accident. I think it was a car accident. And I remember as I walked into the room, the hospital room, and Rabbi Bernstein was really kind of leading the experience. I was there, and the first thing I saw was that his leg had been so broken, it had been, thank God, surgically repaired, but so broken that he was lying on the bed, kind of sitting up, but his leg was on this machine that kind of rolled up and down his leg and kind of lightly, gingerly force his leg, we'll say, to move regularly. I assume it was for issues of the muscle or atrophy. He also had pins in that leg, so it was, and I was so overwhelmed with seeing this young man who was only, 6 or 7 years younger than me, probably, who was healthy, who I identified with, who then was in this situation with the leg and the situation. I became faint. I probably turned white. I didn't know what to do. I was like a deer in headlights. I don't know what I was doing. Rabbi Bernstein handled it beautifully. He was calm. He was comfortable. He engaged. And he offered a beautiful Misha Berach prayer to this young man and his mother, who then were moved and felt inspired. Afterwards, he came out to do a discussion. This is what teachers do. Eric, what was your experience? How did you feel, etc. I could barely get words out. I was just overwhelmed. So many. This is part of the training, and I really realized how ill-equipped I was. And at the end, he said, "Is there something from the Torah, maybe from this week's Torah portion, that touches you about this?" And I was just like, I don't know the Torah portion. And he quoted this pasuk, "Im ken lama zenochi." If this is the case, why do I exist? He says, Eric, every human being asks that question, particularly people who are suffering in the hospital. Why do I exist? That question of Rivka Imenu is perpetual. And it's one that you can bring into this meeting, but in any meeting, is that sense of reverence and awe for that question where there is no answer. It's a question she offered up to the heavens, and you offer to them as well. And with that covenant in mind, you go into the room humbly, but you realize that that's what you're going to face, no matter what it is, whether it's a leg, whether it's something even more cancer, someone who had been surgery, someone maybe who's near death. Either the person themselves or the people around are going to be asking a question. If this is my suffering, why do I exist? And with that in mind, we can go in and engage in a conversation and a prayer and be there for people holding that question, because we hold it too. Because it's everyone's question. It's not Rutz Rivka's, it's everybody's question. So I leave that with us. We come into Shabbat, all of us have our suffering, our struggle. Im ken lama ze anochi? Why do we exist if this suffering happens? Hopefully on Shabbat, we can alleviate some of our suffering. We can be soft and curious about that question. And we can hopefully embrace people, prayer, community, delicious food, as a way of saying, why do we exist when we suffer? There is no answer, but we can struggle with that question together into this Shabbat. Wish everyone a Chodesh Tov, new Mumut of Kislev, a Shabbat Shalom, and may find meaning in all of our questions.